I'm from Istanbul, Turkey.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much for the
Fabulous city.
It is really. I was thinking like it's coming towards the end. I won't be able to ask the question. Actually, it's not a question, but a reflection maybe.
Sure.
And maybe you can add to that. Right from the beginning, I've started feeling something during this pandemic, that there is something shifting in terms of presence. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work mostly with children. So when the pandemic started, of course, we're all in our homes and we started working online with adults and families, but it's quite difficult to work with children.
Yeah.
Because when we were in the clinic, we were in a room with the children doing mostly play therapy. And I always felt that my presence was enough for them to stay in the room. But in front of the screen, and I also see this when children are in front of the screen when they're doing their school programs, it's quite difficult for them to stay in front of the screen doing formal things rather than games, video games. So it was, I think, the first week that I couldn't join in Zoom. I was in YouTube, and the second week I was in Zoom, and I was looking at Jon's face, and I thought, is he frozen? My first impression was, is the screen frozen? But then I really looked at your face very carefully, and I realized that you were in such a silent state, and I really felt your presence across the screen. We're in two different continents, and I was shocked to feel that your presence in my room, it wasn't a physical presence like I feel with my clients in the room, but it was a real presence, a different presence, but it was so real, and it was in the silence. And at that moment, something shifted in my life in terms of my understanding of presence. I mean, the way I feel my presence, and I feel the presence of other people in my family around me, and also people's presence through the screen. And something shifted in my life, in my daily life, and in my clinical work with my patients in the screen with this format. And I thank you for that, because something I've been doing meditation and working on mindfulness for years, but this time in front, I don't like I don't like online stuff, and I don't like the screen much. I don't use computer much, but now we have to. But something really shifted, and I realized that it's not about the screen or physical presence of the other. And actually, the one more thing that I realized, since we go out very when it's urgent, we went out only when it was really necessary. But in our culture, people have this custom of getting very close to each other. We're a culture of people who like touching each other a lot. So it's quite difficult in this time of pandemic for people to learn about physical distance. We don't have physical distance. So, and I saw that we don't learn it in 10 weeks. So it was quite, when I was in the outside world, it was quite persecutory for me, because I'm waiting in line in a market, in a pharmacy, but I just suddenly realized that there's someone so close to me. So I'm like this, I'm really scared of the presence, physical presence of other people, not to get the coronavirus. So something really shifted, both in a paranoid way when we are outside, but when I feel safe at home, I realize something beyond that. And maybe you could add something about this presence, the feeling of presence of oneself or other people around you.
Well, that's really an extraordinary report. And I'm not sure, as I've said multiple times, that I understand what's going on with Zoom myself, but I'm so touched that that something shifted in you. There's a certain kind of embodied intimacy or presence that somehow makes room for the other to feel at home, even under, and feel seen, even under very challenging circumstances. Now, whether that can happen with children when you're, when you're trying to do therapy with children online, that's, who knows. But in terms of what shifted in you, I'd like to hear more from you about, if you have anything to say about like what the actual shift was and how it's influenced, say, even standing online in the shop and then realizing that you're too close or uncomfortable or scared even.
Mm. You want to hear about that, the fear of the presence of the other people?
Whatever you want to, however you want to respond.
Well, I think there is something that I always found difficult in my culture about this lack of personal space. That disturbed me even before the pandemic, but now it's even more disturbing. That's kind of I feel fearful, and at those times it's difficult to be. I'm trying to be mindful in the outside world about wearing the mask, keeping my distance, not touching surfaces, not touching my face. But when I realize other people are not mindful about it, and I can understand. At the beginning I was angry, but then I understood why they're not doing it with bad intentions. But then I saw the difference between being mindful and being mindless. Yep. So that was a very good example of being mindful all the time in your life, in your daily life, other than the meditation periods. But what happened that first Zoom day that I could attend was really profound. That was really something I met in the silence, through the silence, within the silence. It is difficult to put into words because I never thought it could happen through the screen, but now I also feel it with my friends in other Zoom meetings, in many different places. I just experienced it once, and then it just kept on going, because it's state. I think it is a state that you can only become aware of when you're really quiet, calm, when you drop down.
Beautiful. I would hesitate to call it a state, although I understand why, and neuroscientists use that word a lot. I think we need to find another way to actually language these kinds of discoveries in ourselves, because as soon as we call anything a state, then there's a certain way in which we differentiate it from the other states, and then we want it, or we want to construct it or get back to it, that good feeling of like really being present. So I prefer to not think of mindfulness or that as a, or anything that arises in meditation as a state, so much as simply a way of being in relationship to reality. Mm. And when you are willing to show up fully for yourself, then in a sense, you can see that in someone else and have that kind of understanding, because you're both standing under something enormous and feeling it. And that goes in some sense beyond time and space and puts you back in touch with yourself in some new way. But it is a way of being in relationship to the body and to the world that you can continue to explore, you know. I kind of have said it many times that when I'm in conversation with somebody, including yourself, that I can feel you right through the screen. Mm-hmm. And we don't know each other at all, but there's a certain way in which there's a connection that goes beyond time and space and the narratives, and it's felt and it's liberating, it's freeing.
Mm.
So yeah, I think sooner or later this is going to influence when you do get back with the children in the room doing play therapy, you know, in the analog room, you'll be more present for sure
Mm.
because of what's been unfolding.
Yeah.
And if you don't turn it into a strategy or a technique, you know, or into another clinical psychology module, then you have that poetic license and freedom to actually, the kid will pick up on that. The child will pick up on that because that's what's most interesting to any human being about another human being is they're not having an agenda, but they're willing to be 100% here.
Mm-hmm.
Children feel that more than we do.
Yeah.
As long as we're not trying to coerce them or manipulate them into having some kind of special experience, because then we'll feel like we're helping them.
And one more thing, I think about that for the moment, I can feel that it's a way of being, but I think it needs a lot of practice,
Yes.
especially during the day. For now, it's kind of something I catch during the day, but it's not all the time. I'm sure it's not going to be all the time, but I can feel that it's going to become a way of being, but I'm just at the beginning of that.
Well, you know, I don't know if, have you ever been to New York City?
Yeah, many times.
Okay, so there's a cliche in English, especially among New Yorkers. How do you get to Carnegie Hall, which is the big concert hall in New York City
Yeah.
on 57th Street?
Yeah.
And the answer is practice, practice, practice. So the more you exercise the muscle, so to speak, of mindfulness, or the more you engage in the love affair of wakefulness without an ulterior agenda to get anyplace else, the more that becomes, in some sense, your default mode.
Yeah. And it's I really like that. I really like the feeling in that way of being. I really liked it, and I'm really thankful for
Well,
that.
listen, I mean, that might be a good definition for authenticity.
Mm.
You know, that you just show up as you 100% and make space for the other to show up as well.
Yes, it is an invitation. I realize that when you're there, people join you there. I really felt that with my clients. I really felt that when you're there, they just come to that.
Except let's, as I've said a number of times, chop the T off there.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's when you're here. I keep doing it because you can see how easy it is to fall into kind of languaging in that way. And I know English isn't even your first language, but
Yeah.
for us, you know, for those of us who, we often put there out there when we really, it's kind of much more of a rotation in consciousness to anchor it here.
Hmm.
So thank you. I'm so glad you raised your hand.
I'd also like to thank Soren and Jon for the organization. To me, pandemic has been something that I learned a lot about human beings, myself and everyone else. But this experience was exceptional. I always remember this. Thank you very much.
Thank
to you all.
you. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.